In the middle of the Second World War, sonar crews hunting submarines kept finding a seafloor that should not exist. Their instruments were simple: send a pulse of sound straight down, wait for the echo to bounce back off the bottom, and the delay tells you how deep the water is. Out in the open ocean, far from any coast, that bottom should have been thousands of feet below them. Instead, again and again, the echo came back early, far too early. It traced a solid surface just a few hundred feet down, right where the charts promised nothing but open water for miles. At first they thought they had found something real, an uncharted island, a hidden reef, a shallow that no one had ever bothered to map. Then someone tracked it through a full day, and the floor began to move. As the sun went down, the phantom bottom rose toward the surface. As the sun came up, it sank back into the dark. Every evening it climbed, every morning it fell, a seabed that breathed in and out with the light. It was not rock, it was not sand, it was not an island or a wreck or a fault in the machine. It was alive. A single layer of living animals, hundreds of feet thick, stretching across entire oceans, all rising and falling together as if on one breath. For the navies of the time, this was no idle curiosity. A false floor in the water could hide a submarine, swallow a sonar ping, throw off a depth reading at exactly the wrong moment, so they studied it. And the more closely they looked, the stranger it became. Without knowing it, those sailors had stumbled onto the largest migration on the planet. It happens every single night, in every ocean, all at once. And almost no human being has ever seen it. To understand what those sailors had really found, you have to leave the world of sunlight behind. The ocean is not one place. It comes in layers, stacked on top of each other, and they could not be more different. The top layer is the only one most of us ever think about, the surface, down to about 200 meters, where sunlight still pours through the water and powers nearly everything we picture when we picture the sea. This is the bright, warm, crowded skin of the ocean. And compared to everything beneath it, it is paper thin. Drop below that surface layer, and you enter a place with no real name in everyday language. Scientists call it the Mesopelagic. Most people who hear about it just call it the Twilight Zone. It begins around 200 meters down and reaches to about 1,000. And as you fall through it, the light dies. Not all at once, but color by color. The reds go first, then the yellows, then the greens, until even at noon on the clearest day, the last of the sun thins to a deep, cold blue. And then, near the bottom of the zone, to total black. From there down, the only light in the entire ocean is the light the animals make themselves. This dim layer is the largest living space on the planet. Not the rainforests, not the open plains, not even the bright surface waters we know best. By sheer volume, more of Earth's room for life lies inside this cold, half-lit zone than anywhere else in the world. And for almost all of human history, we assumed it was close to empty, a vast, dark nothing between the living surface and the frozen deep. It is not empty. When scientists finally tried to weigh the life hidden in the Twilight Zone, they came back with a number that did not seem possible. The fish down there did not add up to a few million tons as the textbooks had long assumed. They added up to something closer to 10 billion tons, perhaps 10 times the weight of all the fish we believed lived in the entire open ocean combined. An enormous hidden majority of ocean life stacked in the dark. Just beneath the surface, we thought we understood. Every day, as the light begins to fade, the Twilight Zone empties upward. It starts slowly, a few small bodies lifting off the gloom, drifting toward the surface. Then more, then a flood. As darkness spreads across the water above, an entire living layer peels away from the deep and begins to climb hundreds of meters, straight up, toward a night sky it will never actually see. This is the cast of the largest migration on Earth, and almost none of them are famous. There are copepods, flecks of life smaller than a grain of rice, beating their way upward by the trillion. There are krill and shrimp and arrow worms. There are squid and jellyfish and siphonophores, those strange chains of clones strung out through the water like living rope. And above all, there are fish. Small, dark, soft-bodied fish, with rows of tiny lights running down their flanks. Two kinds rule this hidden world. The first are the lanternfish, named for the glowing dots that stud their bodies, and they make up an estimated 2/3 of all the fish in the deep ocean. The second is a fish you have almost certainly never heard of, smaller than your finger, called the bristlemouth. It is now believed to be the most numerous vertebrate on the face of the earth. Not the most numerous fish, the most numerous animal with a backbone of any kind anywhere. There may be 1,000 trillion of them drifting in the dark as you read this. For these animals, the nightly climb is staggering. A lanternfish a few centimeters long will rise hundreds of meters to feed, then sink hundreds of meters back into the deep before dawn. For a body that small, that is a journey of thousands of times its own length, made twice a day, every day, for the whole of its life. And it is not happening in just one stretch of sea. It is happening everywhere at once. The same dusk ascent, the same dawn retreat, in every ocean on the planet, performed by numbers of animals far too large for the human mind to truly hold. Why do they do it? Why would trillions of animals haul themselves up through hundreds of meters of water every single night, only to sink all the way back down again before the sun comes up? The answer is the oldest problem alive. How do you eat without being eaten? Almost all the food in the ocean is built at the surface. Sunlight feeds the drifting plants, the plankton, and nearly everything else feeds, sooner or later, on them. If you are a small animal living in the deep, the surface is the pantry, it is where the meal is. But the surface in daylight is also the single most dangerous place in the sea. Up there, in the open light, a predator can see you coming from far away. Tuna, squid, seabirds, larger fish, all of them hunt by sight, and a small, soft-bodied creature in clear, bright water is an easy target with absolutely nowhere to hide. So the migrants split the difference, using the one thing in the ocean that reliably changes, the light itself. By day they stay deep, hidden in the gloom of the Twilight Zone where the hunting light cannot reach. Then, as night falls and the surface goes dark, they rise under cover of that darkness to feed in the pantry while it is finally safe. And before the sun returns, they drop back down into the black to wait out the dangerous day, climb toward the food or hide from the teeth. They have settled on doing both in shifts, timed precisely to the turning of the light. Many of them carry a second trick as well. Their undersides are lined with tiny lights that glow faintly downward, tuned to match the dim glow of the surface far above. To a hunter looking up from below, hoping to catch a dark silhouette against that faint light, the glow fills the shape in and erases it. The animal simply disappears. They hide from the darkness, in other words, by carrying a small, careful light of their own. This nightly rise does not happen quietly, and it does not happen alone. When a layer of life hundreds of meters thick lifts toward the surface, the rest of the ocean follows it up. The migration is a moving feast, and everything larger comes for the meal. The lanternfish and the bristlemouths rise to graze on the plankton, and close behind them come the things that eat lanternfish. Squid surge up out of the deep to hunt in the dark. Tuna and swordfish drive into the rising swarms. Dolphins, seals, and sharks time their deepest dives to the migration, plunging down to meet it. Even the great whales bend their lives around this rhythm, sweeping through the densest patches of it with their mouths wide open. Much of what we treasure about the open ocean traces back to this. The tuna, the billfish, the squid, the dolphins, the whales are fed directly or one step removed by the small, dark animals of the Twilight Zone and their endless trip up and down through the water. Lift that migrating layer cleanly out of the sea, and the great hunters above it would suddenly have far less to hunt. And it runs on a schedule you could almost set a clock by. Night after night, the same rise at dusk, the same fall at dawn, so dependable that the hunters of the open ocean have built their entire lives around it, evolving to be in the right water at the exact hour the food arrives. It is, in a very real sense, the engine room of the open ocean. A vast biological tide that rises and falls not with the moon, but with the sun, dragging the appetite of an entire sea up and down behind it. We almost never think about it because it runs in the dark, beneath the waves, on the far side of a surface we only ever skate across. But this hidden tide does one more thing, and this one reaches well beyond the ocean. It reaches the air you are breathing right now. Every night, when those animals rise to the surface to feed, they fill their bodies with carbon. It is locked inside almost everything they eat. The plankton at the surface pull carbon dioxide out of the seawater, and the seawater pulls it from the sky, and when the migrants graze on that plankton, all of that carbon passes straight into them. Then they swim back down, hundreds of meters into the deep, carrying the carbon with them. And down there, in the cold and the dark, they breathe some of it out, release some as waste. And in time they die and sink, taking the rest with them. The carbon they hauled into the deep tends to stay in the deep, sealed away from the sky, sometimes for hundreds of years. Scientists call this the biological pump. Every single night, this living elevator carries an immense load of carbon from the bright surface of the ocean down into its cold interior, and quietly leaves it there. The migration is not only feeding the sea, it is steadily drawing carbon out of the atmosphere and burying it at the bottom of the world. No one engineered this, no one designed it or switched it on. It is simply what happens when countless trillions of animals feed near the surface and digest in the deep, over and over, night after night, for millions of years on end. And the size of it matters to every one of us. If that pump were to falter, far more carbon would linger in the surface waters and bleed back into the air, and a planet that is already warming would warm faster still. The largest migration on Earth, the one almost no one has ever watched, is part of what has kept this world livable. It is helping to hold the climate steady every night for free, in the dark, with no one giving the order. For decades, the only way to sense this migration was the way those wartime sailors first did. Bounce sound off it from a single ship and read one small patch of ocean at a time. Then we found a way to watch the whole thing from space. A satellite called Calypso, built to study the clouds, carried a laser that could fire down through the surface of the sea. And buried in its data, scientists found the migration written across the entire planet. For 10 straight years, from orbit, they watched the living layer of the Twilight Zone climb every night and fall every dawn, ocean after ocean, all the way around the world. The greatest animal migration on Earth, finally mapped by a laser in the sky. And here is the strange part. We can now trace this migration from space, and we still know almost nothing about the animals actually making it. We have barely begun to sample the Twilight Zone. We are still naming the things that live there. We are also already learning how to fish it. The Mesopelagic holds one of the last great untouched stores of life on the planet, billions of tons of fish that no fleet has ever truly hunted. Some look at that and see the world's last free meal waiting to be hauled up into the light. But pull too hard on the Twilight Zone and you may not just empty it out. You may slow the pump that helps keep the carbon out of our air long before we have understood what it is we are breaking. So this is the migration nobody sees, the largest movement of life on the planet, happening tonight in every ocean, hundreds of meters beneath the surface. A daily tide of the living that feeds the whales, that buries the carbon, that we first met as a ghost on a sonar screen, and watched at last from orbit and have still barely begun to understand. It has been rising and falling out there in the dark, since long before there was anyone here to notice. And it will rise again tonight, whether we are watching or not. The ocean, as always, keeps its secrets. If you want to keep descending into those secrets with us, this is Blues Below, where we explore the ocean's deepest mysteries, one story at a time. Subscribe and follow along, and we will see you in the deep.